Healthcare is always a hot topic around the globe, especially in the United States. When you're sick, you go to the doctor and put your trust in those individuals to do what's best for you. When your wife is giving birth, you typically go to the hospital and put your faith in nurses to care for that baby with the utmost respect and care. When a family member is terminally ill, you put your faith in hospice workers to make their last moments as easy as possible. There's also surgery, where an anesthesiologist is tasked with administering drugs that put you at high risk. So there's a lot of trust that goes into the healthcare industry to ensure your ultimate safety. The last thing on your mind is that a cold-blooded killer could be masking as a healthcare professional, but sometimes that's exactly what happens. Lucy Letby dreamed of becoming a nurse, and after leaving comprehensive school, she joined the nursing program at the University of Chester and graduated in 2011. Those who knew her described her as a geeky individual who always wanted to do good by helping out with charitable causes. After graduating, she got a job at the Countess of Chester Hospital in Manchester, United Kingdom. In her own words, her duties at the hospital were caring for a wide range of babies requiring various levels of support. In 2013, she became the face for a project at the hospital where they were trying to get funding to build a $2.5 million pediatric unit. It appeared at the time she was a respected and very well-liked employee. However, by 2017, an investigation had been launched at the hospital following 15 deaths and 17 life-threatening incidents involving babies between June 2015 and June 2016. Before involving the police, the hospital contracted out an independent expert medical review after concerns were raised about the high mortality rate in the neonatal unit. The review found that even the doctors were taking extreme notice of the number of deaths. It was even more concerning because the infant deaths during that period were not naturally occurring tragedies. However, there was one thing in common with all the deaths: Lucy Letby. In 2016, pediatricians had removed her due to concerns about her involvement in a series of unexplained deaths. While senior medics at the hospital were fighting to keep her removed, hospital managers were fighting to have her reinstated. Before this, in 2015, Dr. Ravi Jayaram, a senior doctor at the hospital, raised suspicions about Letby after he observed her standing over an infant whose breathing tube had been dislodged. She stood there, watching the baby's oxygen level drop, and did nothing. The doctor intervened, but sadly the baby died 3 days later. He then filed a complaint with the hospital administration, once in 2015 and once in 2016, but his complaints were ignored for months. In another instance, a mother found her premature infant son in a state of distress, bleeding from the mouth, and Letby shrugged it off like it was normal. She then told the mother, "Trust me, I'm a nurse." The infant then died 5 hours later. It's believed that Letby injected air into his bloodstream, ultimately causing his death. Letby's supervisor even noticed unusual behavior from her. She said she saw Letby spending an unusual amount of time with a premature baby who she wasn't even assigned to care for. That same baby unexpectedly took a turn for the worse and died. She then proceeded to spend time with the baby's family instead of her own designated baby. Letby was then arrested in 2018 and 2019, but released both times. Finally, in November 2020, she was arrested and charged with the deaths of 7 babies and is being accused of 10 attempted murders between 2015 and 2016. It's alleged that besides injecting air into the infants, she also poisoned them with insulin and overfed them with milk. When authorities went to her home to search it, they found some very shocking notes that read,
"I don't deserve to live. I kill them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them. I'm a horrible, evil person.
Another note read,
I am evil. I did this."
She even wrote on a post-it the word bastard regarding Dr. J. Yaram and another doctor, after learning they were the ones that raised concerns about her. She even eerily searched on Facebook for the parents of infants she allegedly murdered. In total, she made 2,381 searches. As of today, she has never owned up to anything and maintains that she never intentionally hurt any infants. When asked what she wanted to do with the babies she was looking after, she replied,
"To care for them, to do my best for them, to help them."
As of May 2023, her trial is currently ongoing, and she remains innocent until proven guilty. However, if convicted, she will become United Kingdom's most prolific child killer. Melanie Casper, who went by Mel, was born on July 8, 1966 in Lakewood, Colorado. She grew up in East Texas and went on to attend Texas A&M, and this is where she would meet her future husband, John. She then attended medical school at the University of Texas Southwestern, which is also where she did her residency, followed by a fellowship at Baylor. In 1996, Mel joined the physician's anesthesia practice and began working at various hospitals across Dallas and became very well respected in her field. In 2022, Mel and John were living their best years, enjoying their time together along with their dogs, Tripper and Shiner. However, on June 21st, 2022, all that would change. Mel was feeling dehydrated, and upon leaving Baylor Scott and White Surgicare in North Dallas, she decided to take a saline IV bag home with her. Once she arrived home, she hooked herself up to the bag, and minutes later, she suffered a fatal heart attack. Her husband, John, was devastated and couldn't understand how his seemingly healthy 55-year-old wife could die from cardiac arrest.
The most agonizing thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Turns out, he had a right to be confused because 2 months after her death, a medical examiner found that Mel died from a lethal dose of the anesthetic drug bupivacaine. Bupivacaine is more commonly known as a nerve-blocking agent and is injected into the spinal cord. 1 month later, on August 24th, an 18-year-old man by the name of Jack came into the facility to have his deviated septum repaired. However, things didn't go well, and midway through the surgery, it was halted due to a spike in his blood pressure, causing severe respiratory distress. Thankfully, the patient survived but had to be hospitalized for several days. This caused the surgery center to temporarily pause its operations. Investigators then decided to look closer at the IV bags at the facility. That's when they found that 2 of the bags had small puncture holes in the clear plastic packaging. Investigators were desperate to find the culprit and decided to take a look at the facility's video surveillance. That's when they discovered their suspect. On August 4th, Ortiz can be seen walking from an operating room to the bag warmer. He then places a single IV bag inside, visually scans the empty hallway, and then quickly walks away. Shortly after, a 56-year-old woman, who was undergoing scheduled cosmetic surgery, went into cardiac arrest. Another incident took place on August 19th, once again showing Ortiz approaching the bag warmer, with an IV bag hidden behind a paper folder, before he allegedly swapped it out for another. Within an hour, another patient suffered complications. In all, the facility experienced a total of 10 unexpected cardiac emergencies between May and August of 2022. After investigators had their likely suspect, they learned that the surgery center had begun investigating Ortiz on May 19th. He was notified of the disciplinary inquiry on May 24th, and the first incident involving a cardiac emergency occurred later that week. Ortiz received his medical license in February 1991, and before all this happened, he had been practicing as an anesthesiologist at surgical centers around Dallas. However, as investigators looked closer into his background, they found a long list of issues at the facilities he worked at. They also found he had a criminal record, consisting of jail time for past violent crimes. In 2020, he was placed on administrative supervision by the Texas Medical Board after a patient nearly died in his care. In 2014, Before Ortiz began allegedly poisoning people, he was accused of abusing his ex-girlfriend and the mother of his child. A neighbor by the name of Roxanne Bogdan helped her move out of his house and into hers in December 2014 after police were called over a domestic dispute. Ortiz then blamed Roxanne for the breakup. 4 months later, in April 2015, Roxanne was in her bedroom when she heard Ortiz's very loud sports car peel into his driveway. She then heard a gunshot, and moments later, she heard her dog yelping. She ran to her backyard to see what was going on and found her dog's chest covered in blood. She then called a friend to help her take the dog to the animal hospital. On the way, she called 911 to report that Ortiz had shot her dog. He was subsequently charged with the shooting. During Roxanne's testimony, she would release some shocking information. She said that Ortiz was known to shoot rabbits in his own yard frequently, and they would run into her yard and sadly die. Also, the daughter of Ortiz's ex said that while she was living with him and her mother, he told her on numerous occasions that he wanted to shoot Roxanne's dog because he was upset about the barking. In the end, he was convicted of misdemeanor cruelty to a non-livestock animal and sentenced to 25 days in jail and 2 years of community supervision. In October 2018, he was reprimanded by the state medical board for failing to notify all hospitals about the misdemeanor charge. It then came out that Ortiz was arrested in 1995 for assaulting his spouse at the time. In 2005, his female partner filed for an emergency protective order against him. Then there was the arrest in December 2014 for assaulting his ex-girlfriend, who Roxanne helped. Even the former director of surgery at Dallas Regional Medical Center, Jeremy Johnston, had an incident with Ortiz. He said that during a dispute at work, Ortiz started screaming at him and then got very aggressive and chest pumped him. Investigators also learned that Ortiz had been written up more than 30 times for issues at another clinic. On September 14, 2022, Ortiz was arrested and charged with tampering with a consumer product, causing death, and intentional drug adulteration. Ortiz has pleaded not guilty and is currently awaiting trial. If convicted, he faces a maximum penalty of life in prison. Elizabeth Wettlaufer was born in 1967 in Toronto, Canada, to Bible college students Doug and Hazel Parker. When she was 4 years old, the family moved to South Zora near Woodstock, Canada. Her father, Doug, worked as a salesman, and her mother, Hazel, worked as a secretary. They were devout Baptists, and sometimes Doug would fill in for the pastor at South Zora Baptist Church. In high school, Elizabeth began to struggle with homosexuality, which was a huge conflict with her family's religious views. When she was 14 years old, she even tried to kiss a female classmate but was rejected. While in school at Ontario's Baptist Bible College, she attended a service at a gay-friendly church and was subsequently kicked out of school. This led to her older brother cutting all communication with her. With her parents refusing to believe their daughter was homosexual, they sent her to conversion therapy. After therapy was complete, she said she felt closer to God and felt that her life had been restored. After this, she was allowed back into college, but she and her brother never fully reconciled. In 1991, Elizabeth graduated with a minor in counseling, then re-enrolled in a nursing program at Conestoga College. Although she was acing her classes, she was still struggling with her sexuality. This is when she began to drink alone to the point of blacking out. It was around this time that she also stopped going to church. In June 1995, after obtaining her nursing license, she took a part-time job at a hospital in a town north of Thunder Bay. She then took a second job at an assisted living facility. Although she loved the idea of moving far away from home, the loneliness and isolation began to take a toll on her. After falling into a deep depression, she began to steal drugs from hospital rooms, such as Valium and morphine. She even tried to take her own life one night while at work after stealing the drug Ativan. A co-worker found her stumbling around and slurring her words and led her to a bed. After recovering, she was fired from her job. But she didn't lose her license, and instead, the Nurses Association set her up with counseling and treatment for her alcoholism. The hospital even helped her amend her file to say that she had resigned for health reasons instead of her being fired. In 1996, Elizabeth moved back to Woodstock and began attending South Zorra Baptist Church once again. This is where she would meet her future husband, Donnie Wettlaufer. Within a year of meeting, the two married and settled into a white bungalow just off Main Street. At this point in her life, she was able to find a steady job at Christian Horizons and became sober. However, by 2006, her homosexuality began to resurface. She then started forming romantic relationships with women online. It was around this time that the voices in her head started. To try and drown out these voices, she would sing Bible verses out loud. This is also when she began fantasizing about killing her patients. While working at Christian Horizons, she began to receive numerous warnings about errors she was making with medication dosages. She was also accused of verbally abusing her patients, and at one point, she was given a one-day suspension. In 2006, her mental state got so bad that she left work and checked herself into the Woodstock Psychiatric Hospital. It was there that she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and given drugs to combat it. In 2007, Elizabeth and her husband divorced after he discovered one of her online relationships, officially ending the 11-year marriage. At that point in her life, she was filled with anger about her life, her job, and her marriage, and held a deep regret over never having children because her husband didn't want kids. She saw her husband as a bad guy, which angered her even more. She was planning to move to New Brunswick to be with her online girlfriend, but after briefly breaking up, the woman instead moved with her kids to Woodstock. With the girlfriend unable to work due to a medical condition, Elizabeth became the sole financial provider. Since Christian Horizons had a rule against same-sex relationships, she decided not to return and instead applied at Crescent Care. After being hired, she became responsible for 32 different patients, and at night she was responsible for all 163. It was here that her dark fantasies began rearing their ugly head, and so she began targeting 86-year-old Clotilda Adriano and Clotilde's sister-in-law, 88-year-old Albina, who both suffered from dementia. She would give them different doses of insulin just to see the results. On August 12, 2007, an overwhelmed Elizabeth became frustrated with patient James Silcox after he began yelling. So she went to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of insulin, and injected him with it. By 3 in the morning, James was dead. The doctor ruled it death by post-surgery embolism, and Elizabeth was tasked with filling out the paperwork. On December 23, 2007, 2 days before Christmas, she murdered her second victim, 84-year-old Maurice Granite. After this murder, she and her partner broke up. She then began missing a lot of work, and when she would actually show up, she would make errors with patients' medications. In 2008, Elizabeth had a new girlfriend, and it was during this relationship that she felt compelled to confess her crimes. However, the girlfriend never turned her in and only asked her to stop, because she didn't want Elizabeth to get caught. In late 2008, she attempted to murder 60-year-old Michael Priddle, but was unsuccessful. 3 years would pass before her next murder. In 2011, she murdered 3 more patients: 87-year-old Gladys Millard, 95-year-old Helen Matheson, and 96-year-old Mary Zurowinski. At this point, Elizabeth began to get in trouble at work for making sexual comments to coworkers and high school students who volunteered at the facility. As a birthday present to one of the students, she took her to medieval times in Toronto, and it was on this drive that Elizabeth confessed once again. However, just like her girlfriend, the student never turned her in. Instead, the student broke off the friendship and never spoke to Elizabeth again. In October 2013, Elizabeth, who was back in church, had gone over to the pastor's home and confessed to killing 90-year-old Helen Young. Once again, the pastor nor his wife reported her to authorities and instead prayed with Elizabeth, asking God to forgive her. In 2014, Elizabeth confessed once again to an ex-boyfriend, but just like all the others, he failed to report her. I can only imagine that all these people failed to report her because they felt the patients were in the care of hospice and already dying. But at the end of the day, it's still murder, and she took away the precious time the family still had with their loved ones. On March 28, 2014, Elizabeth murdered 79-year-old Maureen Pickering. It was also around this time that Elizabeth was fired from Crescent Care for medication errors. However, just like the hospital near Thunder Bay, they chose to cover it up and seal Elizabeth's file. This led to her getting a job only 1 month later at Meadow Park Long-Term Care. After starting at Meadow Park, she immediately began stealing morphine to feed her addiction. On August 31, 2014, she murdered a 75-year-old man by the name of Arpid Horvath. After murdering him, she resigned from Meadow Park and once again checked herself into the Woodstock Psychiatric Hospital, but remained there for only 2 weeks. After getting out, she started working for a nursing agency called Lifeguard Home Care. While at the agency, she worked for 8 different healthcare facilities. During this time, she would attempt to kill 2 more victims. According to Elizabeth, after being assigned to St. Elizabeth Healthcare, she resigned after learning she would be working with diabetic children because she didn't trust herself around them. In 2016, Elizabeth traveled to Toronto and checked herself into the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. She then began chatting online with her childhood friend Hart from South Zora. Once again, she confessed her crimes, but this time someone finally did the right thing and reported her to the police. She also confessed to her psychiatrist, who also reported her. On October 5, 2016, after being released from the center, she was taken into custody and would spend 2 hours confessing all her crimes.
And they wanted to just try and get a little bit more detail of
Yes.
of the involvement in each circumstance, in
Okay.
each death, right?
Okay.
That's what I'd like to do today, and just get some more detail.
Okay.
Okay? So,
It's a long list.
it is, but I think that you and I think we can get through it together.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. As long as you're patient with me.
I've got all the time in the world. I'm not going anywhere.
Because I'm physically comfortable. It's a nice chair, but
Yeah. But
No,
anytime you need to get up and wander around, like I said, if you want to take a break and have me leave and just kind of stretch your legs and whatever the case may be, you go ahead.
okay.
Okay, if you have to use the washroom at any time, just let me know.
All right.
Okay? Because like I said, I'm here as long as we need to be.
Okay.
Okay? And I'm not pressuring you to stay any longer than you want to. But I think that if we just kind of sit down and go through this, like I said, we'll get through it together.
Yes.
I'm a pretty patient person, and I'm here to just listen to what you have to tell me, okay?
Okay.
Okay. And like I said, I appreciate it. Okay?
Shockingly, during her time as a nurse, she had more than 130 complaints on her record. After her crimes came to light, Crescent Care, Meadow Park, and the Ontario Nurses Association were sued by the daughter of patient Arpid Horvath for $12.5 million. In the end, Elizabeth pleaded guilty to 8 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. While she is eligible for parole in 2041, she is likely never to be released.